Literature has different ways of portraying masculinity and gender roles. Throughout our gender studies unit, there has been a common theme of hegemonic masculinity. The pieces of literature that will be discussed are Things Fall Apart, We the Animals, Lucy, and The Awakening. Each of these pieces of literature explore how masculinity is exercised in different cultures, yet in the end, the men all experience a similar fate. Throughout comparing literature that addresses traditional gender roles across cultures, expressions of masculinity converge into a fear of being seen as weak and the need to subjugate women as a way to feel and be seen as masculine. However, non-Western cultures are more explicit in their patriarchal assertion and demonstration of physical dominance, whereas Western cultures are more covert in their hyper-masculine ideology due to the progressive efforts of women which make the acts of physical dominance socially unacceptable.
Throughout our gender studies, we have come to realize that masculinity manifests itself in different ways across different cultures. The study of non-Western masculinity is marked by prevalent male aggression and subjugation of women in society. There also exists a precedent that men must be strong and assertive people, and swaying from this is generally frowned upon. One piece of literature that examines these social ills is the novel Lucy. Lucy takes a look at traditional familial structure in a non-Western society, Antigua. Lucy's mother places her in many confining situations throughout the duration of the novel. For example, when Lucy is in Antigua, her mother gives both her brothers the opportunity to attend to college and further their education, but Lucy is not granted the same opportunity. Additionally, there exists a very overbearing patriarchal relationship between Lucy's mother and her father. Her father is never around to be there for the mother or Lucy and her brothers. Furthermore, Lucy's father constantly cheats on his wife, showing close to no respect. When he finally passes away at the end of the novel, he leaves Lucy's mother broke with nothing at all to support herself. Another novel that constructs non-white masculinity is We the Animals, written about a poor, half Puerto Rican, half white family. The narrator of the story and his two brothers are the central focus of the story. However, it's more important to note the relationship between the mother, Ma, and the father, Pops. Pops is not around the house much, and he leaves Ma to take on the majority of the household tasks and take care of the troublesome little boys. Pops also thoroughly enjoys having sex with Ma, so much so that he even had sex with her practically in front of the children. This is important to note because we see Ma acting as a sexual object of property to Pops. Not only does he treat her as sexual property, but Pops physically abuses the mother as well. All of this seems common to the young boys, and this is further evidence that the subjugation of women is normal to these non-white cultures. When Pops is around, he likes to teach the boys how to be proper men. Pops tells the narrator in one scene that because both of his brothers know how to swim, he'd be doing him a disservice if he didn't teach him how to swim as well. Pops believes that this is a manly rite of passage. In the end of the story, when the narrator comes to terms with his sexuality, the parents almost immediately disown him and eventually put him into a facility to straighten him out. The father is especially afraid of his son as being homosexual because it causes him to question what kind of man his son will grow up to be. This TED Talk from Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie that we viewed as a class provides a great insight to non-white cultural masculinity and the upbringing of young boys from an African point of view. Additionally, it highlights how feminism is viewed by African cultures.
Then an academic, a Nigerian woman, told me that feminism was not our culture, that feminism was an African, and that I was calling myself a feminist because I had been corrupted by Western books. Which amused me because a lot of my early reading was decidedly unfeminist. I think I must have read every single Milton Boone romance published before I was 16. And each time I try to read those books called the feminist classics, I get bored, and I really struggle to finish them. But anyway, since feminism was un-African, I decided I would now call myself a happy African feminist. At some point, I was a happy African feminist who does not hate men and who likes lip gloss and who wears high heels for herself but not for men. Of course, a lot of this was tongue-in-cheek, but that word feminist is so heavy with baggage, negative baggage. You hate men, you hate bras.
Our lives are influenced by our peers and their beliefs. For instance, Igbo tribes in Africa believe in male masculinity and dominance, that all individuals are conditioned from a young age to understand the concept of male superiority. Anyone who strays away from this belief is shunned by the community or considered weak. In Chinua Achebe's Things Fall Apart, the main character Okonkwo's life is based upon the belief of excessive masculinity and hard work. He prides himself on his masculinity and does not accept failure or weakness of any kind, including any from his family members. This is evident in his hatred of his father for leaving Okonkwo when his family broke. Okonkwo's father was considered weak by society because he did not repay any of his debts and refused to build his fortune. Similarly, when his son Nwoye begins to demonstrate feminine qualities, he views his weak behavior with pure disgust. Also, the Igbo culture is a polygamous one, so Okonkwo has multiple wives. He disregards the majority of his wives and beats them when they are not obedient to him. All of this behavior is essentially Okonkwo exercising his superiority over women and his need to act as a strong, hypermasculine character. In conclusion, all these novels provide evidence of how the gender complex is structured in non-Western, non-white society. Men are raised to be strong, powerful, and great, whereas women hardly see the same. Non-Western sexism is rooted within their social structures, as women are constantly subjugated by men, and men's openly negative treatment of women is hardly reprimanded. In these novels, we realize that for years, the social structure of non-Western civilizations has been entirely designed to benefit the lives of men, and women have been completely undermined and undervalued. Next, we will take a look at how masculinity is perceived in Western white culture, and contrast the different social behaviors exhibited.
The concept of Western masculinity is deeply rooted in its culture from a young age. All boys have an understanding that they should be a man and not act like a girl. However, in order to merge into society in an accepting way, boys are not as vocal in voicing their ideals of hypermasculinity due to the progressive efforts of women. However, many male individuals still harbor these ideas and are petrified of being seen as weak. The concept of Western masculinity is demonstrated between Edna's relationship with her husband Leonce as well as Robert. The opening chapter of the book, it is established that Leonce views his wife as a commodity. However, he doesn't treat Edna in the same manner as Okonkwo treats his wives. Instead, his interactions with her are more passive-aggressive and covert than confrontational. For example, Leonce is discouraged that Edna, the sole object of his existence, evinced so little interest in things that concerned him, such as their children, her housekeeping, their sex life, and the callers on a Tuesday. Leonce is a courteous husband so as long as he met a certain tacit submissiveness in his wife, but her awakening shocked him. Further, her disregard for her women duties as his wife angered him and he became rude. He even went as far as to consult a semi-retired family physician for advice on controlling her. He tells him, "You know I have a quick temper, but I don't want to quarrel or be rude to a woman, especially my wife. She's got some notion in her head concerning the eternal rights of women." Edna's relationship with Robert is completely different. Robert is a very traditional man. Once Robert develops feelings for Edna, he chooses not to further his relationship with a married woman, but to rather make his fortune in Mexico to prove himself. When he returns, he respects Leonce's marriage with Edna, and eventually it is Edna that kisses him. However, even though they are in love, Edna wants independence, but Robert wants to get married. When Edna tells him she does want independence, he leaves her because he loves her, but she cannot belong to him. In Lucy is able to see past the veil of the perfect privileged family, and understand that Mariah and Luce's relationship is filled with untruths and insincerity. She's able to tell that their marriage was a show and not something to be trusted. Lucy is proven correct when she discovers that Lewis is cheating on Mariah with her best friend, Dinah. Mariah is also oblivious to Lucy's struggles, as she offers a book on white feminism when Lucy explains she isn't happy, as Mariah believes she has equal power in her marriage due to the progressive efforts of women.
The varying ways masculinity manifests in different cultures is particularly obvious when comparing the husband and wife relationships in the novels. In The Awakening, Mr. Pontellier expresses his masculinity more passive-aggressively than Okonkwo or the father in We the Animals did. Mr. Pontellier uses his words as a means of expressing his male dominance over his wife and others. Okonkwo and Ba from We the Animals both use physical force to assert their dominance. In The Awakening, there's a notable scene in which Mr. Pontellier tries to use his words to get Edna to go inside and have sex with him. There is no physical interaction, just firm language from Mr. Pontellier. Edna understood what he was saying, but decided to ignore and resist it. The key difference between her and other women in other texts is that she had the agency to decide not to submit to his call for sex. In We the Animals, resistance from the mother would have likely led to an intense argument, possibly leading to a physical fight, showing the reader how the culture in which a woman is in drastically affects the kinds of consequences women face from their male counterparts.
As we can see, there's a large difference between Western society and non-Western societies in how masculinity is perceived and demonstrated. While both societies elevate the importance of masculinity and use it to gain power and dominance, especially over women, in non-Western societies, we see that there's a greater emphasis on physical strength rooted in an accepted sexism. In contrast, Western societies are focused on how men must continuously prove their masculinity through mental actions and social success defined by wealth and/or social status. There's less of an emphasis on physical attributes of masculinity than in non-Western societies, but we clearly see similar dynamics in the need for men to assert their dominance and the resulting imbalance of power between men and women. While Western society claims to be more developed than non-Western society due to less visual and overt displays of masculinity, it is still present, and although they bury their sexism behind reasoning and deception, it is still prominent and subjugating, if not more so, than non-Western societies.
Pure protein. If you're not drinking this, I don't know what you're doing. 2, 3, 4. I have way more girls than you, just straight up. Saturdays are for the boys. I finished all of his beer, and I'm not even drunk whatsoever. Cash. I've never done a girl push-up in my life. Watch this. So basically, these are all my trophies. I've won every single one. Volleyball, golf, track and field, polo. I can't believe I missed the game-winning layup. This is an absolutely disgusting color. Red's cool. I hate pink.